record statement by Dr. Lita Kobziar, President of the Association for Fire Ecology, statement of Melissa Moore of the United States Forest Service, and a May 18, 2015 letter from the Office of Special Counsel to the USDA. Without objection, so ordered. We're trying to get a video. I think that we may have it. So let's now recognize the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Cummings.
Ms. Lago, there's been a lot of back and forth about your knowledge of Ms. Rice's case. I want to be fair to you today, and so I'm going to play the clips of your testimony from today's hearing. I want you to take a look at this.
Ms. Lago, Ms. Rice testified that the details of her complaint were made public. Why would that possibly happen?
Well, it is not permitted. It's the first time that I've heard the details were made public. Per our protocol, only people involved in the investigation.
Listen, I don't want to be rude, but I really don't give a damn about protocol. Do you doubt what Ms. Rice just testified to, that the details of her accusations and allegations were made public?
Well, I'm just saying I never heard that before now. I'm just
so do you
doubt
it, is my question. Not whether or not you've heard it, do you doubt it?
No, I don't doubt it.
Okay. Well, if it's against protocol, as you say, and you don't doubt that it happened, what have you done about it?
I just heard it. I just heard about it.
What are you going to do about it?
I'm going to ask what happened following her investigation, who knew about it, and why.
We have this article that appeared in the Huffington Post, and it appeared, this apparently was this is a scathing article about your department, about agriculture, and it details Ms. Rice's case. I mean, it's public right here. It even has a picture of her in it. When did you come on board?
In August of 2011.
Well, you just said that you didn't even know about it. I can't imagine that somebody could have an article, it's about 16, 17 pages, and it's got this picture of her, and it describes her situation in detail, but you just said, sitting here at the table today, you just realized that it had been made public. You didn't read this article?
If I may clarify, what I said I didn't know about was that her
you said you didn't know it had gone
shared with district rangers. I wasn't aware of that. I was aware of this case.
And that this had been public, made public.
Ms. Lago, following up on Mr. Gowdy and Ranking Member Cummings' comments, I don't believe you. When you said you didn't know about this, I also have a copy of this article from the Huffington Post. Out here, no one can hear you scream. It's amazing to me that this has been going on so long, and it's escalating. It's not getting better. How do you respond to that? And would you answer truthfully?
Thank you. I'd like to clarify, I did not intend to say that I didn't know about this. I do know about this. I thought the gentleman was asking me, did I know that her investigation had been shared with district rangers? That is what I was saying I didn't know about. Yes, I knew about this case.
Now, that clip, we heard you say that you did know that her investigation had been shared with district rangers. You said you did not. Is that right? I can't hear you.
That's correct.
Well, this is why I'm confused. You said you read the article that we referred to,
Yes,
the Huffington Post,
I read it when it came out, yes.
and that was in March of 2016, right?
Correct.
Well, the Huffington Post article, and this is a quote from that article. It says, and I quote, in 2012, at the district ranger's request, Rice's supervisor called an all-hands meeting, called called an all-hands meeting. Rice was certain that Beckett would be on the agenda. She begged not to have to attend, but said she was required to show up. Rice's former supervisor couldn't verify this, but said that the meeting was handled insensitively. Nobody took into consideration that maybe she was still feeling like the target in the case. Now, this is the one that got me. This is continuing. To quote, the situation with Beckett was discussed in front of at least 50 colleagues. Rice walked out in tears. I think that was the worst thing that ever happened to me, she said. That's the end of quote. So did you or didn't you? No. About the Rangers. Because I'm confused.
So what I'm attempting to say is I heard Ms. Rice say her investigative report was shared with Rangers. What I imagine that means is the transcripts was passed out to district Rangers. Maybe I misinterpreted. I am sorry. I apologize. But that's what was a surprise to me.
So you did know that her testimony, that the district Rangers knew about it? I mean, they knew about her case and the facts of it. That's what I meant to say.
Yes, I do.
All right, that's all. All right, thank you.
I'll now recognize myself. I'm glad we're having this hearing, and I think you're seeing and feeling the bipartisan frustration. And we're not going to let go of this. You haven't dealt with it appropriately. You've had years to deal with it. Here's the vicious cycle, and I see this above and beyond just the Forest Service, quite frankly. But here's the vicious cycle. In most cases, women, but it happens to men as well, there is some sort of inappropriate behavior to outright rape. It is so difficult. I can't even imagine. I mean, Mr. Cummings talked about this. I can't even imagine having to go through this, let alone trying to recount it, let alone trying to document it, and how brave and how courageous people have to be, like Ms. Rice, to come forward and do that. I can't even imagine. But when that does happen, here's where I see and we see this repetitive behavior, and it's a total failing of the system. That should be reported to law enforcement. And oftentimes it is, because it's a crime. And law enforcement will look at it and say, well, you know what, the government can take care of this itself. And so rather than treating it and prosecuting it as a crime, it's given back to the departments and agencies. Then the department and agency will go and sit, as in this case, and have coffee with this person and say, you know, the case against you is getting a little tougher. Why don't you go and take all of your benefits, all of your retirement, and why don't you just retire, wink, wink. And they're allowed to just walk out the door unscathed. Now, part of this is on Congress. We're going to have some civil service reform. Let's be honest with what Ms. Lago is saying, because this isn't the first time we've heard this. We've heard this at the EPA, from the administrator herself. We've heard this from other departments and agencies. There comes a time where they have to be able to fire somebody, and they can't just let them off the hook and simply retire. I mean, we heard these ridiculous cases over the last several years where they shouldn't get the full benefit if they are proven, if they go through the adjudication process and they can just simply walk away. That's where I hope we do come together in a bipartisan way and break this vicious cycle where these predators can just prey predominantly on women and have no repercussions. We had the one testimony where we have more. Yes,
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Lynch.
Just on that point, I think the evidence in this case and the testimony in this case has shown that management didn't even explore Title V and the recourse available to them to remove these people who should have been removed. So the law is there. It shouldn't be easy to just fire people for any reason. But for good cause, you can use the law, and, I'm a former labor attorney. You have the ability to fire these people. You just chose not to do it. It was either by malfeasance or nonfeasance. Choose whatever course you want. But you had the right to fire these people. You just did not. It may have been because you weren't paying attention, you didn't believe the allegations, but you had the right to fire these people. And you should have, but you didn't. But I agree that we've got to make sure that legal counsel in these departments understand that we will not put up with this crap. Really. This is unconscionable. We all have daughters, go to work every single day. You think we want to see this go on, a workplace like this, where we have, hundreds of complaints about sexual harassment? Fire these people. Or, if you refuse to, then you need to be removed. That's the bottom line. I'll yield back.
Thank the gentleman. So the other thing, and we addressed some legislation to this effect, but we can't have these predators simply bounce from one job to the next. Now, it seems to me that in this particular case, Mr. Beckett, right, is his name, is a small community. They knew what was going on here. To go back and hire him and then subsequently bring him in as a motivational speaker, I can't think of anything more offensive. And you have to take a good, hard, deep look in the mirror and figure out what in the world the Department of Agriculture is going to do to make sure that never, ever, ever happens again. You could go down to Office Max or Best Buy and get a piece of software off the shelf and create a little database and say, this is the do not hire, do not interact list. You can do that for about $50, okay? I don't want to hear about any more excuses. And I don't want the Department of Agriculture, why don't they blaze the trail? Why don't they, let's actually have them lead in this area rather than deal with this for 40 years. I don't ever want to have to call you up here again, but I do want to know that you're leading the way. But you're not going to prove that until you actually do it. We hear too many people say, oh, my stats are good, and I did 100% within the time frame and everything that, but the evidence shows to the contrary. So that's what I hope we do accomplish. Lastly, as we gavel down here, particularly to Ms. Rice, thank you for the bravery that you've shown to be here and do this. This is not a dream come true testifying before Congress. But I hope you do know how inspirational you are to a lot of women, and you represent a lot of voices that are quiet and silent, and they're watching on their computer or TV, and I hope when you go back and visit with your husband that there's satisfaction in that. It's helpful to us, and we want to be part of that solution, and I know you do too. And Ms. Donnelly, thank you as well for your leadership on this.
Mr. Chairman, would you just reiterate what I said about making sure that she's protected? Because I want to make it clear that we're on the same page.
There is no daylight between what Mr. Cummings is saying and what I'm saying as the chairman of this committee too. On behalf of all of the members, we will go to the end of the earth to protect you and the other women that have gone through this, but don't be bashful in picking up that phone and letting us know. It will be answered and we will respond. And to those in management and in other positions, I'm telling you what, we will use every power we possibly can from this pulpit to make sure that they are treated with dignity and never have to go through that again in any way, shape, or form. You will see more subpoenas and more hearings than you can possibly imagine if we hear one thing about any sort of reprisal in any way, shape, or form. I can't say that strongly enough. This has been a good hearing. I appreciate the four of you taking time and testifying today. Last thing, Mr. Leonard, within 2 weeks, I expect that Mr. Cummings' letter, the letter that we jointly did, gets responded in its totality. 2 weeks. Committee stands adjourned.